So, hello everybody. Looks like people are starting to pour in now. That's great. I'm just going to hold off before giving any formal introductions for another minute or so. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Ted Barnett, and I am the president of Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, which we founded. Oh, it depends on when you consider it was founded. But Rochester Lifestyle Medicine was founded back in 2015, and we split up into Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, which is our nonprofit that is organizing this speaker series. And that was back in about 2017. And this is part of the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Lifestyle as Medicine lecture series. And we've had a lot of great speakers in the past, including Dr. Greger and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Barnard and Dr. Clapper. I could go on and on. But tonight we're very excited to have Lisa Smith, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her in just a minute. But as you know, her topic will be plant-based living for people of color. Has it arrived? And that's with Lisa Smith, MBA. A little bit more about us. We are an educational organization. We teach a number of programs, including the CHIP program, the Complete Health Improvement Program, which we've been teaching now for since about 2015, and that's the oldest lifestyle medicine program out there. And we also teach the LIFT program, if people are interested in trying that out, to help lift your mood. And then a program that we've developed on our own, the 2-week or 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart, which we're very proud of. We've been doing that for about 2 years. And about 600 people have taken that program. Over 400 took it actually in our office, 24 people at a time. We were running it once a month, and then COVID-19 hit in the spring, and we pivoted fairly quickly to running it on Zoom. And it's been really working quite well on Zoom. So we've had another 150 or so people do it that way. And the great thing about Zoom is we can see people anywhere in the English-speaking world. So we've had people from at least 23 states and a couple of Canadian provinces, and doing very well. And for people who've gone through the 15-day jumpstart, in the 15 days, the average drop in cholesterol, for people whose cholesterol starts over 200, the average drop has been about 50 points. And we've had a number of people come to us with diabetes who actually, once they go on a whole food plant-based diet, are not on, don't seem to have diabetes anymore. Their hemoglobin A1C has dropped dramatically. And so it is now about 7:34. And just one more thing about the diabetes. If you know anybody who has diabetes, it's anywhere in the country, we'd love to help you out. Sign up for our Whole Food Plant-Based Jumpstart on our website at rocklifemed.com. And we run one every month. I was going to say, we had a patient who came in with a hemoglobin A1C of about 13, and within 3 months it was down to 6.0, and now it's about 5.4, and he's been doing this for over about 1.5 years now, and doing really fabulously. Actually 2 years now. So anyway, let me just have Lisa Smith unmute herself, please. And I'm so excited to be able to introduce Lisa tonight. She is a serial entrepreneur, health and wellness subject matter expert, nutritionist, and professional speaker. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in business administration. She's certified in plant-based nutrition. She's also the executive director of the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group, or PBNSG, which was started by my good friend, Paul Chatlin, who started it because he was rescued by the Esselstyn program. He was about to go under the knife for coronary artery bypass surgery, had symptomatic heart disease, and through the not so miraculous effects of plant-based nutrition, I don't like to refer to it as a miracle. It's just basically eating healthy food, but it allows your body to heal, and his body healed, and he didn't need the intervention. So Lisa, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, there she is. Hi, Lisa. So good to see you. From one Great Lake to another. I guess you're near Lake Michigan. I'm near Lake Ontario. So, I first saw Lisa when she spoke at the P.H.A.R.M conference a few months ago, the Plant-Based Prevention of Disease, and she was co-panelist with Dr. Milton Mills. And I'm just so impressed with all the things you've done. How did you get involved with all this?
Essentially coming on to the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. So when Paul asked me to step up as executive director last year, it kind of opened up a whole new world in plant-based nutrition for me and my organization. I've been just operating, moving in my little world with the Black Health Academy and Professionally Fit. And so I was asked to be a panelist on P.H.A.R. this year. I attended P.H.A.R. last year in North Carolina, I believe it was, with Paul. And we made some great connections and decided to do some strategic partnership with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once again, they asked Paul to speak this year and asked me to join. And it was quite relevant, as you know. It's what we're talking about this evening and just kind of the social injustice that's been going on in the world. So it was the perfect year for this topic and this conference. So the Plant-Based Prevention of Disease Conference is an annual conference, which is really beneficial. It is a plethora of some of the most well-known speakers in plant-based nutrition and lots of education, CEU opportunities, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. No, I thought that was really wonderful to see you on there. And then, so you've started your own organizations? What are they?
Yeah, so my first health and wellness company, Professionally Fit, I started in 2015. And at Professionally Fit, we do more of organizational wellness. So I do a lot of corporate talks. I work with organizations, entities, community organizations, civic organizations to help do demonstrations, lunch and learns, seminars, or teaching my signature course, Farm to Table, and essentially teaching how to use plant-based nutrition and health and wellness in the workplace to, derive more productivity out of staff and members, and just the importance of creating a culture of health and wellness in the workplace or in the institution, whatever it may be. And then my second company, the Black Health Academy, I started in 2017. And at the Black Health Academy, we're striving to eradicate the most common chronic diseases which disproportionately impact people of color. And so the Black Health Academy is a membership-based platform. It's a free membership where we house about 80 master classes broken up into 4 different categories. And, we upload new content every month. We host a podcast. We do 2 free live nutrition classes every month. And there we also host my signature course, Farm to Table, and we do one-on-one health and wellness coaching. So both companies are 100% plant-based and just coming from 2 different angles a little bit. But I absolutely love it. And then in addition to running those 2 companies, I also run the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group full time. So I have my hands full with plants all day.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how have you adapted to COVID and not being able to be in person?
Man, oh goodness, Ted, doing virtual speaking engagements these last 6 months or so have been great, but I miss the stage and the mic so much. I miss, interacting with the people and, there, as we know, as evidenced by the blue zones, there's so much benefit with regard to meeting in person, health-wise, right? And just that social connection, that intimacy of other humans. And then being able to break bread and taste the food if you're teaching this content is really huge. So having to take that component out of our content at PBNSG and out of my own course, because I would hire a chef and cook food every week in my course. It's been very different holding these courses virtually, but I've been doing so many speaking engagements from, talking about social injustice to talking about immunity. And so it is quite a ripe time and a ripe season for our field. And so it's been fun and I've been inundated and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I know that recently you had a seminar with the University of Michigan. Was that where? Yeah. And I know you got some slides from that. We'd love to see some of those if you could share that with us, please.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. I recently did a presentation with the University of Michigan entitled The Intersectionality of Veganism, where I talked about how kind of veganism and plant-based nutrition intersects with different demographics, specifically people of color. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and we could talk through a little bit of that content.
Okay, great. And while you're doing that, I'll just tell people that there is a Q&A button you can click at the bottom of the screen. And those are the questions that we're going to try to answer later on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I was kind of moved this year. U of M asked me to speak for the second time this year. I also spoke during Veg Week last year, and that was in person, right on campus there at U of M. But this year, I had to do it virtually, but it was a very different feel doing this presentation this year. And if you guys don't mind, I just want to preface this by saying this, but you know, we know most of the fatalities due to COVID have been people of color, right? And so it made this talk even more relevant this year. Last year, you know, the focus was just like in general, you know, how much of the population identifies as vegan or plant-based, and, you know, how does that intersect with more marginalized communities? However, this year, you know, it's been evidenced plain and clear for us the disparities in Western medicine for people of color, right? This year, it's very clear that, you know, getting COVID, how it impacts you in your livelihood or even being able to come out of it alive. There were a lot of social factors that played a part in that, not just someone's pre-existing conditions, but their neighborhood, their zip code, their socioeconomic status, all of that played a role. And it really hit home for me in the work that I do, and, you know, really pushing forward the message that this way of living, a plant-based, a holistic plant-based lifestyle, is available to everyone. And there are many demographics who don't believe it's available to them and still looked at as a bit elitist. And so this presentation just meant a little more to me this year. But here we go. So the intersectionality of veganism, I start off by just sharing that sometimes I forget this myself, that such a small portion of our population still only identifies as vegan, roughly about 3%. Now, we know that there's certainly been a trend in individuals eating less meat, right? So there's still a lesser consumption of animal products, dairy, eggs, all animal products. However, only a small percentage of, you know, the US population identifies as actually vegan. And so we are still outnumbered, right? And so that speaks to, you know, when you go into social settings, trying to dine out, especially depending on what zip code you live in, if you're in the US, you know, can really determine your access to being able to live this lifestyle in a more fluid manner, right? And so very small percentage still identifies as vegan. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that because I feel like I'm surrounded all the time by people who live the lifestyle wholly and fully. And so according to, you know, these statistics here, why do people go vegan? You know, for the majority of the people, it is health. And for just as many people, it is also compassion, right? So for the earth, for the animals, which is huge, for climate, and that makes a huge difference. But what I find specifically in working with people of color and helping us make the transition to a plant-based lifestyle is that it's almost 100% of the time health reasons. We know the most common chronic conditions that we see in our society, things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, many autoimmune disease, you know, more people, communities of color are more heavily impacted by these chronic conditions, right? And if the numbers aren't higher, as far as the total cases for these conditions, I can guarantee you the fatalities are higher. So while for some conditions where we have it, there's a lesser occurrence, we're still more likely to have worse outcomes, right? Everything from permanent things like amputations to fatality. And so we know there's still a ton of work to do with regard to Western medicine and helping marginalized communities overcome a lot of these chronic conditions. But this hit home for me. Now, I know for me, when I became a plant-based vegan, it was not for compassion. It was simply for health reasons. And I didn't have anything that I needed to reverse. I had just done so much studying and education that I was dead set on preventing many of these chronic conditions, to your common cancers, to heart disease. And so for me, it was a prevention thing. And as I got into the lifestyle, began to live it wholly and fully, it became more of a compassion thing. So now I'm equally compassion and health. So what we recently learned, a really cool poll, was that, you know, African Americans are the fastest growing demographic of vegans, specifically African American women. The Pew Research poll showed that while, you know, about 3% of individuals identify as vegan, more like 8% of African Americans are vegan. And a Gallup survey also recently showed that people of color in just the last 12 months are showing that they're eating way less meat than they were previously. About 19% of of people of color in the last 12 months. So that was really a big deal, is that we're the largest growing segment of vegans. And so you would think that there should definitely be more targeted conversation and content, because some of the problems that these marginalized communities face are unique to our community. Every community has issues that are unique to their community. And so we need more representation in this space for this reason. We are a largely growing demographic in the plant-based space. But unfortunately, you know, veganism is still considered more of an elitist diet reserved for people of privilege, because we know there sometimes can be a heavy cost associated with it. In addition to, depending on what type of community you live in, just the lack of access to whole fresh foods, to seasonal foods, to affordable foods. And so for that reason, you know, there is, you know, communities, more lower socioeconomic communities are inundated with fast food places, liquor stores, you know, a lot of takeout places, junk food, gas stations. And so a lot of these communities, while they are definitely interested in, you know, extending their life and the life expectancy of their offspring, unfortunately, the access to these foods are not as prevalent as we see in other higher socioeconomic communities. And we know, you know, the health of our nation, as far as it goes, you know, the life expectancy has increased significantly over the last several years, the last several decades, you know, but just 200 years ago, you know, the life expectancy didn't really exceed the age of 40. And so now people are living longer, but unfortunately, many communities are living longer with disease, right? So living longer doesn't necessarily mean you're thriving. It doesn't necessarily mean you're disease or medication free. It doesn't necessarily mean you're happy, healthy, and independent, right? Living longer just means sometimes for some individuals that we've done a great job with the advancement of technology and medicine and pharmaceutical drugs that allows you to live longer with chronic conditions. And we know adopting a whole food plant-based diet, one of the main side effects is that you can live longer disease-free, you know, as evidenced by many of the blue zones. But still to this day, you know, the African-American male has the lowest life expectancy in the US. And while Asians typically have about the highest life expectancy in the US. So we are still trailing behind, but we are plagued by the same chronic diseases. We know roughly around 600,000 people perish every year from heart disease in this country, which is certainly a preventable and reversible disease. And in the Black community, our leading causes of death tend to be heart disease, cancer, and stroke. And so those, again, are many what we call diseases of the affluent, right? You know, a lot of are the ways of eating, the lack of movement, a more sedentary lifestyle, or a lifestyle that forces you to choose between meeting your daily needs like security, shelter, food, or putting energy into health and exercise and grocery shopping. And so many people wake up every day having to choose between, you know, what to tackle because they don't have the luxuries that some other communities have. So here's what we know. We know in doing our research at the Black Health Academy, when I first started the company, I really started to dig into, you know, what are the numbers saying? And when our members join the Black Health Academy, they take a survey that kind of asks them questions like, what are your biggest pain points in your health? And do you have a physician of color right now? What would you like to see more of? Are you interested in plant-based nutrition? And so we kind of compared that with the national statistics for Black health. And we know that the infant mortality rate is twice that in the Black community than it is in the white community. Black men are 7 times more likely than white men to receive a diagnosis of HIV and more than twice as likely to die of prostate cancer. Black women have nearly double the obesity rate of white women and are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer, although Black people have less occurrences of breast cancer, we're more likely to die from it. And Black people experience higher rates and worse outcomes of hypertension, diabetes, and stroke. And unfortunately, as we've seen very plainly and clearly this year, something that's not mentioned on this particular slide that I think is relevant to bring up as well is, this concept of weathering and chronic stress that also lends to a lower life expectancy for people of color. Weathering is essentially defined as the lived experience of being Black in America, and the toll it literally takes on your physical health is a real thing. I've experienced it myself. Just this year, I wrote an open letter to my entire staff and members at the Plant Based Nutrition Support Group following the death of George Floyd. And just some of the responses that I got from that letter alone, seemingly well-established and educated people and doctors telling me, I'm just using racism as an excuse and it's another notch in my victim belt. I mean, it was really taxing me trying to articulate my personal experience, but then that personal experience being negated from someone who's never walked in my shoes. And so this concept of weathering, yeah, Ted, you want to jump in?
I just want to, yeah, it's such an interesting concept. Could you elaborate, explain more what you mean by weathering?
Yeah. So weathering is essentially the day-to-day experiences, sometimes microaggressions that we experience as people of color. So I'm happy to give you an example. Since I became the executive director of the Plant Based Nutrition Support Group, I've experienced several microaggression and disheartening experiences from a lot of our staff and volunteers. And what I mean by that is, my authority was challenged on several occasions or not respected. I've been sent text messages where my intelligence is being insulted. I have, even after writing this open letter about George Floyd, and the title of the letter was called Being Black in America. And the responses that Paul and I received, people saying, I no longer want to be part of PBNSG if you're going to support Black Lives Matter. I want to step down. We've had members of our board say stuff. People saying, I'll no longer make donations, take me off of your email list if you're going to support Black Lives Matter. Someone telling me, I'm going to be a victim. So can you imagine what it's like, me telling my experience and the responses I'm getting? First of all these negative responses were from people who did not look like me, were not people of color, and they're challenging my personal experience and basically saying it's not true, it doesn't exist, or moreover, I won't support you as an organization if you support this cause for social justice. Mm-hmm. And so Ted, lost sleep several nights because of this. Because I had to, in my mind, think about how I wanted to respond. And, I got anxiety behind it, right? Here I am, the executive director of this organization, and we're losing members and funding simply because of something that's going on in the world. And I decided to present a microcosm of that. And, it's impacting the entire organization. And my personal stance was, what I told Paul is that I felt like it would be irresponsible as an organization to not speak out. I think it's, in my opinion, quite cowardly to hope that somebody else will stand on the front lines and fight for the marginalized people, and that we had a responsibility because we had a platform and such a large voice to speak up about this. But we had to take the consequences that came with that. But it was taxing on me emotionally, very much so. Sure. And I remember having several conversations with Paul about this, and he's personally apologized. And, so that's literally called weathering. I was removed from the mission of promoting plant-based nutrition and optimal health to take time out to try and work through these negative responses and these anti-movement, it was just a mess. It was a mess. And I've had that experience several times since being the executive director of this organization. This was just like the biggest one and the most recent one. But I've had people, completely disrespect my authority and try and go to Paul, and he constantly have to redirect them back to me. And we've had to have sit downs and round tables with people so we can be face to face and hash out things that had nothing to do with plant-based nutrition. And so that's taxing on you, and you have to decide, do I still want to be part of this organization? Is this meaningful enough for me to continue? Because I have my own health and wellness companies that I'm running. And so it's really, people go through years of that, working in the corporate world. Sometimes you're the only person of color at the table. Sometimes you're the only woman at the table, and trying to make sure your voice is heard and respected. And, you feel even more pressure, because if you are the only woman or person of color at the table, you feel like you have to represent your entire gender or your entire race. And so there's so much pressure that comes with that. How should I wear my hair? Did I say this right? What about my credentials? Am I qualified? You sometimes have imposter syndrome, and that's taxing. And a lot of times, unfortunately, white men don't have to experience that and don't know what it's like. And that literally years and years and years of that take potential years off your life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that explanation. I'm really grateful for that.
Yes.
All right. I interrupted you. You can
Sure. Okay. So
go back on your flow.
those are the Black health statistics. So let's go on to specifically what our members say at the Black Health Academy. So we have about a little over 900 members now at the Black Health Academy. And our members, as I mentioned earlier, take a survey, and they say that very, flat out, they want to be whole food, plant-based. And they deal over 78% of them say obesity is their biggest issue, right? Excess weight. And over 73% of them do not have a primary care physician who is Black. And the reason that's important, and the reason we asked that question during that survey, is because we know with the health disparities in Western medicine, unfortunately, there's some built-in biases in Western medicine for people of color. Things like, we have a higher pain tolerance is still a belief system among some physicians and healthcare providers. Oftentimes, our symptoms are ignored, or it's decided for us that our symptoms are a cause of something else. And it's not until we're later diagnosed with something totally different, and now we're in stage 3 or 4 of that thing, that, this could have been presented had my voice been listened to and proper testing been done. And so sometimes when you don't have a healthcare provider or a physician who looks like you and you feel like you can be open with and comfortable with, that really impacts the quality of care you receive. And I don't know, this particular statistic may be fairly old, and I need to double check, but the last time I checked, only roughly about 5 to 6% of US physicians were people of color. And that makes a huge difference in the type of healthcare you receive and how comfortable you are with going to your healthcare provider, how much you're probably willing to share with them. And I know personally, I've had a very negative experience with a healthcare provider here in Metro Detroit. I remember going into the doctor's office because I needed a prescription to see a dermatologist. It's actually right around the time I went vegan, and I thought I was allergic to all of these different fabrics. I thought I was allergic to polyester and wool because I was just breaking out. But anyway, it turns out it was the last stages of detoxing as I was eliminating animal products, but I didn't know it at the time. And so I said, let me go see a dermatologist. And I found out that you have to get a prescription from your primary healthcare physician to see a dermatologist. So I just went to get a prescription, nothing else. But in getting that prescription, I needed to get my weight and blood pressure and all those things done. And so I did. And so when the doctor came back into the office to chat with me for a few minutes, he looked down at my chart and he was appalled. He said, "Oh my God, wow. You don't have high blood pressure. You don't have high cholesterol." Like, he said this verbally. He verbally expressed his shock in me not having any of these chronic conditions. He's like, "What are you doing? Do you work out? Do you eat right?" And where we were in the community was a community that was, mostly Black people. And so I know he saw, even the waiting room was filled with Black people. And so he saw Black people all day, and he was already ready coming into the room to say, here's your issue, blood pressure, cholesterol, instead of treating each patient like an individual. And I get it, it is common in our community. However, it just let me know that you show up into a room, and before you open your mouth sometimes, or, you have a chance to tell your side of your story, things are assumed about us, and that really impacts the quality of care. And so those are our top concerns for our members at the Black Health Academy. Now, let's talk about how this kind of translates to veganism. There are some phenomenal voices in the plant-based world, many doctors that you guys have had here at, Rock Life, and that we host all the time at PBNSG. But the fact of the matter is, not many of them look like me. It's plain and simple, right? And so when I was getting certified in plant-based nutrition, I was learning from, the regulars, the top people in this space, right? The Esselstyns, the Gregors, the Furmans. And this is the makeup of, right now, plant-based educators. Now, when you talk about plant-based activists, when you talk about maybe, recipe books or podcasts, you can definitely find people of color. But when you go to these veg fests and, the lineup, where you go to these big national annual conferences, it looks very different. And so if you are a person of color really seeking out this content at a high level, like I was, with a mission to create content and teach it, you're going to be learning from mostly white males. That's the fact of the matter. And so the lack of representation really stood out to me as I studied and continue to study, my field. And so this is kind of what it looks like, right? And we go on and, videos you're going to watch and conferences you're going to attend. I remember actually a P.H.A.R. conference that Ted mentioned earlier that he saw me at earlier this year, a few months ago. When the flyer was first released for that conference, my little brown picture was in the lower right-hand corner of the flyer. And this was before the pandemic. And so the conference was still going to be in person in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And I remember receiving an email from a young lady out of New York City, and then a Black woman, and she said, "I am so happy to see your picture on this flyer." She said, "This will be my first time attending the P.H.A.R. conference, and I am so happy to see somebody that looks like me." She said, "I was so excited when I saw your picture on the flyer that I looked you up, found your email address, and emailed you, and I was wondering if we could hop on a phone call and, you could talk to me about how you were able to get on this lineup. I'm striving to do the same thing here in New York. I'm a personal trainer. I have my own gym. I'm plant-based, and I want to preach the plant-based gospel. And so I'm so happy to have found you." And just that joy, I was so happy, to be available to her. But it's also sad at the same time that it's such a rarity that she had to quickly seek me out and latch on to me, because we don't know when we're going to see another one, right? And so, especially at that high of a level at those annual conferences and things like that. So there's plenty of people of color in a plant-based space. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm trailblazing a new path here. But, the representation, the higher you go, and especially looked at Veg Fest and all these national events, it's just not there. And so it just spoke volumes to me to keep going, no matter what microaggressions and things I have to go through, as executive director or as I just navigate white spaces, it's worth it, right? And so that was the takeaway there. Oh, this is the flyer right here, right? And so here I am down here in the lower right-hand corner, and she found me and sought me out, so that was super cool. But, things are trending in a bit of a different direction, because just this year, a couple months ago, my company, the Black Health Academy, we were so happy to sponsor this particular event called the Reclaim Your Health Summit. Just took place last month in September. And as you can see, every person on this flyer is of color. This is the very first time I've ever seen this done by Dr. Judy Bragman, who goes by the Plant Based MD on Instagram and social media. And she herself was also fed up. I actually interviewed her a couple years ago for the Black Health Academy. And she said, "I'm going to create a summit with people in the plant-based world that are all people of color." And so things are shifting. I just wanted to share this to show that it's shifting. Yes.
And
right?
it was really wonderful. I recommend people, it's still available. You can go to that website, Reclaim Your Health. I think that's what it's called. If you look up Judy Brangman, you'll find it. And it's really worth it. And it's, yeah. I was so amazed. I'm in love.
Yeah. As was I, Ted. It was so good. And you know what? So Black Health Academy sponsored this event. And when people upgraded to the VIP package, they actually were able to book a one-on-one nutritional consultation with the Black Health Academy. And so as I was doing, some of these nutritional consultations, they would get on the call and say, "This conference was amazing. I can't believe, they were all people of color. You guys are doing amazing work. This was exactly what I've been looking for so long." I heard that so many times doing these nutritional consultations. And so that really made me happy. And I, just letting them know that individuals out there, we're really trying to carve out our space and let you know that plant-based lifestyle is available for people of color.
This is actually one of the advantages of the pandemic, because we had been talking about doing this in Rochester for years to do a conference like this, and now we don't have to because it's been done. But I mean, obviously, you can go online once we go live again. We can,
Yes.
but it's been done. It's fabulous. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let me reshare these slides. But yes, it's been done. And as Ted said, recordings are still available. Again, it was called the Reclaim Your Health Summit, Dr. Judy Bragman. And I apologize, guys. Let me reshare. It was amazing. And I was so happy to help, so it was really cool. All right, so slides are back up here. Let me share my screen. And we're coming to the end here, and I'm happy to open it up. Excited to hear you guys' questions and comments and everything. Okay, so more movement in the plant-based space, right? So here's are some great books. The actual book that actually catapulted me, guys, into a plant-based lifestyle was Russell Simmons, The Happy Vegan. I actually love that book. It was written by a person of color and who's been plant-based for years, and it was just a very digestible book. And then where I was in my life, it resonated with me at the time, and it actually encouraged me to go fully vegan and essentially go on to create my own plant-based nutrition course, Farm to Table. And so that was a game changer for me. And then Tracy Mcquarter, By Any Greens Necessary, she recently, had the 10,000 Black Women Vegan campaign, where she got over 11,000 Black women to sign up to try, a vegan lifestyle. She is in the middle right now of her 21-day jumpstart with those 11,000 women. And so it is amazing. There is definitely movement in this space, and it makes me so excited because we need it. We need it more than anything. And again, COVID has made that glaringly clear. Some more people of color activisms groups, this book here in the upper left-hand corner, Vegetation Over Medication by Dr. Bobby Price, a Black physician. I think he's out of the Georgia area, down south somewhere, but this was a phenomenal read. I actually referenced this book in my course that I teach. And you have Afro Vegan Society. So just some great individuals who are doing great things. Tabitha Brown has a huge following on social media. She's always reviewing vegan foods and products, her and her entire family. So a lot more representation is now available in the plant-based space. Here's a few more. Black Vegan Social. Cooking with Q is actually a plant-based restaurant located right here in Metro Detroit, and she does plant-based meal prep and was just awarded a $50,000 grant to just keep the mission and movement going. So she is phenomenal. So, as one of the takeaways I want to give you tonight is to, check your privilege. One of the most common questions I'm asked is, what can I do? I'm a white male, a white female, or just a person with means. And I recognize that I have privilege, but I'm not exactly sure what to do with it, right? So first of all, acknowledge it. We all have privilege in our own way, right? Whether it has to do with race, gender, class, even religion, nationality, right? There is privilege that you have. And how can you utilize that privilege to create opportunities for more marginalized communities? I applaud Paul Chatlin, the founder of the Plant Based Nutrition Support Group, all the time, because his organization, said we have about over 7,000 members. And honestly, our demographic is 55 years and up, and mostly white, right? And so I was just as shocked as that 7,000 people to make me the executive director. I'm like, really? I don't look like your demographic, right? And he He said to me plain and clear, you are qualified. You're educated. You live and breathe this content. He saw me speak several times, and he said, we need to take this organization in a different direction. We need a little more diversity, and we know we needed to be younger, right? He just, made it plain and simple. And so he said that, younger people of color are a bit of the future in this realm. And so I want someone to lead this organization that's going to take us into that space. And so he used his privilege, and he took a huge risk, and we've lost staff who just couldn't vibe with me, right? And I've been challenged plenty of times, and surprisingly or not surprisingly, mostly by white women, who just, can't vibe and can't, I'm 20 years their junior, and it's been problematic, and be quite honest with you, but I'm pushing through, and it is, one of the best and most challenging experiences I've had. But Paul used his privilege to put me in a position. Now I'm qualified, right? So I don't think anybody should be put in a position just because of their demographics. They need to be qualified, absolutely, right? But I came in with those qualifications, and I showed that being part of the organization, upwards to a year before I even was made executive director. But use your privilege to give individuals opportunities or a voice, or even in your own social circles, even if you don't have hiring power, you're not part of an organization, you have, conversations with individuals where you can speak up for people. The more and the better understanding you have about the disparities in our community when it comes to health, in my opinion, the more obligated you are to be a voice when it's relevant. And we all have, activism looks different. It looks an abundance of ways. All of us are not making signs and marching. Paul was activating when he appointed me. My form of activism was starting the Black Health Academy. So activism looks a majority of different ways, but we all have an obligation, to humans, right? To the compassion and the extension of our life on this planet and with this planet. And so we need to really recognize our privilege in doing that and never take it for granted. Yeah, so that's about me. I want to leave you with this quote, which says, no single individual is responsible for where we are, but we can collectively compile our privilege and make an impact, because veganism is a human diet. And I am more than happy to hear what you have to say, questions, comments, and here's my contact information on the screen.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was wonderful. You covered so much. And we have some questions that are showing up here. And I promise to get to all of them, maybe not in the order that they were typed. But first of all, I just want to remind everybody that this will be available as a recording in a few days. We'll be putting it out there, and everybody will get a link. So you'll be able to see it again and share it with your friends. So here's a question from, this is from a woman who says, I am a white physician who sees a large number of women of color with a very high rate of obesity and chronic condition. I have suggested consideration of plant-based diet with a low rate of interest. What can I do to promote this more effectively? FYI, I am vegetarian, but about 90% vegan. Thanks. What do you think?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's going to be relatability. So what I would recommend is, if you can connect or develop some type of strategic partnership with someone in your community, an entity or organization that you can refer them to, or hold like sessions or nutrition classes or virtual, or something that you can partner with so that they can see more representation. Because I understand that as a physician, you have very little time with the patients oftentimes. And so, you recommend lifestyle changes, and sometimes it just doesn't go over well, or you continue to see the same people over and over again with no change in their situation. But please know, first of all, don't give up on those people, because I can guarantee you, by the time they come to me and take my course, their physician, two of their friends, a family member, a YouTube video has already recommended this to them. And so remember that we all play a part in the continuum. And even though you may think it's falling on deaf ears, that they're not going to do it anyway, you might get discouraged. That's not what's happening. You're planting a seed, somebody else is watering it, and eventually broccoli, it'll sprout. Maybe you just won't see it. But what I find has been effective, I had a physician here where I am who, you know, recommends the Black Health Academy, because we're virtual and you can do the same thing, right? And so now that you know of an organization that specifically caters to people of color and specifically targets that obesity, that high blood pressure, that high cholesterol, that type 2 diabetes, it's free, it won't cost them anything. They can join these virtual nutrition classes that we do every first Saturday and fourth Sunday of the month. And so start building these partnerships and having these resources readily available, because oftentimes they need to hear it from somebody else.
That's a great answer. Plus, I think some of these books, like I know Tracy Mcquarter's, and you mentioned some of these books that inspired you. What would you think about that, Lisa?
Oh yeah, like By Any Greens Necessary is great. The Happy Vegan, Education Over Medication. There are definitely some great books that maybe you can have in the office on display. You know, showing people of color too would be cool. So instead of just giving them, you know, I got a cool tip for Dr. Neil Barnard. I interviewed him a couple months ago, and he said the coolest thing. He said when he wants someone to read a book, what he does is he bookmark a page or a chapter in that book, and he tells them, you know, I think you'd be really interested in this book, this particular chapter on obesity, and, you know, the section about really resonating. I think that would resonate with you. So he doesn't just recommend the book. He caters the recommendation to a certain chapter or section in the book that he thinks they can relate to. And he says, then I just leave it on the coffee table, or I send it to him in the mail, but I bookmark a page like, skip to this section and this is for you. Or same thing with YouTube video, right? The way I got my dad to give up dairy, believe it or not, he chased me around the house with a gallon of milk in my hand as I was trying to pour it down the drain. And he's like, you're not pouring down that milk. And I was like, okay, sit down with me and watch this 9-minute YouTube video. And it was a congressional hearing of Dr. Milton Mills talking about how people of color are not supposed to consume dairy. And it was only like 9 minutes. And we sat down on the couch and watched that. I had the gallon of milk sitting on the floor right between my legs. Like, that was the bargaining chip. And he watched this video. After 9 minutes, he said, okay, go pour the milk out. And he hasn't touched dairy since. And so, you know, saying, hey, I got a bit of information that I think will speak to exactly what you're talking about. Listen to this or read this has been really effective.
Great. Thank you for that answer. By the way, I noticed some people are putting questions into the chat. Can you please put the questions into the Q&A where I'm more likely to see it? Here's a question from someone locally. Studies have shown that people of color have been exposed to a higher volume of pro-smoking advertising in terms of concentration and density. Given the detrimental effect of animal and processed foods, do you think advertisers are also targeting minority communities? And if so, how can we call out these advertisers for targeting vulnerable communities with such ads?
Yeah, so that's 100% true. Fast food and junk food is advertised over 40% higher in communities of color. One of the books that I read that spoke to this in grave detail with a lot of statistics and things like that and recommendations on what we could do was Fast Food Genocide by, I think it's P.H.A.R.M. Fast Food Genocide is a great representation of how marginalized communities are literally targeted in the marketing space for a lot of this junk food and fast food. Because what we see a lot of times in higher socioeconomic status communities is if someone like a Taco Bell tries to build there, they will reject it. You know, they come together and say, no, not in our community. And in those communities, you see higher instances of exercise stores and gyms and, you know, facilities that are dedicated to health. And in other communities, you see, again, liquor stores and fast food places and junk food places. And so absolutely, communities of colors are much higher targeted for sure. But so starting a initiative in your own community. One of the things we've seen do really well in Detroit area is community gardens, right? So urban gardens, so that definitely encourages movement, that encourages growing your own food, that encourages bigger exploration of the plant kingdom, which we know is vast. And many of us, even if we're vegan, we still ignore so much of the plant kingdom. And so I've went to community garden events, right? So in starting small, eating local, you know, encouraging encouraging those things in the community is huge. But then also, you know, reaching out to these networks and these entities, but start with Fast Food Genocide, because that's a great book that details the impact it has on these communities, the advertising.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question about Rochester, but also I think generally, what are some resources for people of color to educate themselves about how to go plant-based? And this question is from Rochester, New York. Well, for that I can answer. You just contact Rochester Lifestyle Medicine, and you can make an appointment with one of our providers. But I'm going to let Lisa answer that as more generally.
Yeah, like, well, the Black Health Academy is a great resource. We have 4 schools inside the academy. The Master School, Plank U, which is dedicated to exercise, Plant U, which is dedicated to plant-based nutrition, Sci-Fi, which stands for psychological fitness, was all about mental health, mindset change, discipline, habits, neuroplasticity. And then the Master School is master classes on things like type 2 diabetes and obesity and all of those things. So I would highly recommend the Black Health Academy, because again, it's free, right? And if we have time, Ted, I'd be happy to show the Black Health Academy promo video just to give you guys an idea of what we do. It's only about a minute or two. But that's a great resource, because, you know, it's available worldwide. We have members all over the world. I was happy to learn we got Black members in Japan. I was like, what? And so that's super cool, you know, so they come and join our virtual nutrition classes every month, every first Saturday. I've been teaching our first Saturday class. Our signature first Saturday class is called Get Planted, an introduction to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And we've been teaching that for 2 years now, every first Saturday. And it is super popular, super free, 2 hours. And there's a different topic every month. And we're teaching people how to adopt a plant-based lifestyle. And our audience is usually 99% Black. And so it's a great resource.
Just a little bit more about your academy. Is it a physical building?
No.
Oh, okay. Where do you hold your events?
Yeah, so before COVID, we were holding the first Saturday class in a event space in downtown Detroit, where people will come and we would pack it out. We would have plant-based food and I would lecture for a couple hours. It's a phenomenal event, but since COVID, it's been online.
Sure. And how did you advertise? How did you get people to come?
Eventbrite was great. So we would have hundreds of registrations through Eventbrite. And then after that, we built up through email marketing. So again, this isn't my first company. So I had a nice email list prior to starting this company that I was able to advertise to as well. And then in addition to, we've done some paid advertising, done some promo videos. But then word of mouth, when people come to the first Saturday classes, they get so much value. They started bringing people back with them. We have a whole Black Girls Run group that was coming every month, and they would bring their runners and their walkers. They would come before a marathon. It was so cool. And so, you know, we've built a great following and a great community.
Nice. Somebody comments here, this is really a comment. The New York Times had an article in 2018 about weathering and its impact on the African American community. So people want to look that one up.
Yes.
Interesting. So what do you recommend and what resources are available for dealing with stress and stress management?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm a very strong believer in putting your money where your struggle is. So depending on what the stressor is, stop trying to DIY it. You know, I think part of the issue with there's a lot of these conditions going on longer than they necessarily have to, and our suffering sometimes going on longer than it has to, is that we feel like we know the issue, and so we feel like we can solve it. For example, you know, I've heard plenty of times, like, I just didn't feel like it was worth me investing in a nutrition coach because I know my issue is sugar. I just need to stop eating sugar. And so trying to DIY these things. So for me, you know, I hired my therapist on my birthday in 2018, and it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. My insurance paid for it. You know, I know it's different things for different people, but there is really a lot of free or affordable mental health services out here. And a lot of times things like therapy or grief groups and things like that, should be looked at more as a preventable measure and not a treatment. Sometimes we don't consider these things until there's something wrong and we know, we can't take it anymore and we're bogged down with, these depressive episodes or anxiety or overwhelm. But it's also a preventative measure to prepare you because life is going to happen. So I think first and foremost, put your money where your struggle is, and then also we can't ignore the nutrition with regard to mental health or being able to navigate chronic stress, right? Nutritionally, you need to be full. Many of us calorically are full, but nutritionally we're starving. And so it's really important that you're eliminating the refined sugar from your diet. It's really important that you are eliminating the SOS, really the salt, oil, and sugar, not just the animal products. And so sometimes those deficiencies in like omega-3s or just not being hydrated. I've done many panels with healthcare professionals and they say one of the first things they recommend to their patients is you're dehydrated. You can't problem solve or navigate the issues you have if you're not properly hydrated. So water is huge. So those would be my tips to just start with chronic stress and being able to recognize the difference between acute stress and chronic stress is really important as well, because stress is not a 4-letter word. It's not a bad thing. It's only when it's chronic that it can become problematic and where it can become an immunosuppressant. However, acute stress is really healthy for us and highly recommended, especially if it's tied to purpose. And we see a lot of that with the neurological work done in the Alzheimer's space. And so recognizing the difference between acute and chronic, and then again, tapping into resources outside of yourself to get the assistance you need.
Sure, that's a great answer. Also, just to put in a little plug for what we do, we actually run a 10-week program called the Lift Project. And it's there's a video every week that's actually created by this one of the same people who created the CHIP program. And so you can, and we only charge $99 and it's 10 weeks. And it's basically now it's all on Zoom. And there's a video that you watch at the beginning of the week, and then you kind of have homework to think about a particular thing. And it's based on positive psychology. And everyone has something to focus on for the week. And then we get back together again and talk about how the week went. So again, the Lift Project, take a look at our website for that. Let's see here. So, someone's asking, what is your first Saturday class and how can I learn more?
Yeah, so our first Saturday class is called Get Planted, an introduction to a whole food plant-based lifestyle, that is available through registration via Zoom. You can go to our website, which I'm happy to show right now if you like. It's called the Black Health Academy. So let me pull that up for you.
And then you can show you can show the video of your farm to table too at the same time.
Yeah, and it's every first Saturday of the month at 11 a.m. EST, and we go for about 2 hours. So let me go ahead and show the website and our promo video here at the Black Health Academy for you guys. All right, so here is our website, and this video actually, and here's the link right here to register for Get Planted every first Saturday. And you also can request a special Get Planted class for your own community or organization too. So if you're like, my members can't make first Saturday or whatever the case may be, we'll teach the class for you, for your community or members or staff. But I'm gonna show real quickly the video.
I founded the Black Health Academy in October of 2017 to fast in Western medicine. Our mission is to eradicate the most common chronic diseases we see in our community. There are so many discrepancies and disparities in health for Black people that it's almost safe to say that Western medicine does more harm than good. And so the Black Health Academy is a platform which marries community with e-learning to help individuals understand the power that they have within themselves, to educate themselves on medicine, medications, prevention, chronic disease, right of disease and discomfort. Get Planted, an introduction to a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, is our monthly first Saturday nutrition class we hold in downtown Detroit. During this class, we lay the foundation of the importance of a whole foods plant-based lifestyle and essentially overall nutrition. We teach prevent many of the common chronic diseases we deal with just by changing the way we eat. So help us at www.theblackhealth.
Yeah, so there it is, guys. That's the Black Health Academy. Again, you just click right here to register for Get Planet, and it'll take you to our Zoom registration page. And it's every first Saturday of the month, available to anyone and everyone. And there's, multiple dates here through next year. And we will be happy to have you. And then you can join for free. You enroll just by clicking here. And again, there is we do, which is really affordable, and it's about $159 for 6 sessions. And I think, let's see, Ted also wanted me to show my farm to table course. Let me get that for you guys.
I think there's something you might want to check. Was it, I had a hard time seeing that video. Was it my connection, or was it, I'm just curious, was that anybody else? Oh, maybe it's me.
Okay. I can check my, let's see. How is my connection right now? Am I clear? Am I breaking up? Okay. Bandwidth folks had a bad video. Okay, so I'm breaking up. So let me switch over my internet connection and see if that helps.
I don't want to necessarily go down that true, but we got a lot more questions here. We can.
Okay, I've switched my internet connection. Let me know if that works, or I can jump out and come back in.
Bob, what do you think we should do? Bob's our engineer here.
Well, in the emailing, why don't I just put links to the things that you would want to show, and then maybe now we can just continue with some of the Q&A.
Right, or Bob, maybe you could find those videos and run them.
I would.
Actually, the only one would like to see the one about farm to table. Maybe if you ran it. Okay. But anyway, let's go to Q&A, and we'll see if we get our technology up and running later on. Okay, yeah. So it looks like a lot of people had some trouble. Okay. So I think maybe Bob can go to your website and maybe run those. Okay. Oh, here's a question. Suggestions to promote this in teens. Any ideas about teens and children?
Teens and children, it's been my experience that you're going to have to get to the parents first. Because they still have the buy-in decisions in the household. But again, that book, Fast Food Genocide, was helpful with that as well, as far as talking about the impact of a lot of the animal products and fast foods that we eat, and the impact on violence, disposition, attitude, and how it can lead to a lot more violence in these lower socioeconomic communities, how the nutrition is tied to that. So I know I've been asked to speak several times at team-focused events. And so there is definitely an interest there, and they have to understand what I found relatable for a lot of teens is, you know, if they're involved in physical activities, sports, and teaching them how what they eat will impact their performance. And so tying it to something that's going to manifest in the physical for them has been helpful.
So how about that movie, Game Changers? Has that been helpful?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that's been my experience as well. Here's a question from someone. How are African-American men taking the challenge?
So the majority of our classes are definitely women, 100% for sure. But the woman, as you know, usually controls the energy in the home, right? And what I found is that, especially in my farm to table class, a lot of our students, they say, since I've been taking this class and changing the way I eat, of course, it's changed the way I cook and grocery shop for the home. And I've never met the husbands, and the wives are telling me my husband has lost 20 pounds just from the way I've changed, the way I've eaten in this course. My husband's blood pressure has gone down, and he wants to know who this Lisa lady is. I'm making the recipes out of your recipe book, and he loves them. And so I've had men in the farm to table course and in the first Saturday classes, but it's definitely majority of women, but they are definitely taking it home.
Got it. Someone says, I just read Super Immunity by Dr. Joel Fuhrman. While the nation is battling the coronavirus pandemic, why don't we hear more from the medical community about how a whole food, plant-based lifestyle can improve our immunity and help survive the pandemic? This message should especially be relevant to the Black community that has struggled so much with this virus.
Yeah.
That's really not fair. It's not really fair to ask Lisa to answer on behalf of the medical community. But go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is, why don't we hear more about the power of plant-based nutrition from the medical community and the impact on immunity and things like that? Is that right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it all starts with the education. You know, I've done several talks at medical schools, and you know, the students, one of the things we found at PBNSG, because we created a medical school course material curriculum, but part of the reason it hasn't taken off and taken well is what we discovered is that if the students aren't tested on the content, it's not going to be relevant. And so what happens is, you know, if lifestyle medicine, plant-based nutrition science is not integrated into the curriculum and integrated into the testing at medical schools, that sometimes is the division there. And so if they're not learning the nutrition from the beginning of their education, then it becomes problematic. Because I don't know, Teddy, you tell me this, is I've always wondered is, if physicians decide to be lifestyle medicine physicians or plant-based physicians, is that mostly something you pursue on your own after medical school because you have an interest in it?
So that's a really interesting question. So I'm an interventional radiologist, which is basically how I make my living. I call myself the high-tech doctor with low-tech solutions. So I can do your angioplasty if that's what you need, but I'd rather have you eat broccoli. However, guess which one gets paid? I get paid more for.
The angioplasty.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you know, that's not a legitimate excuse, but it's certainly a fact that, you know, people, they graduate from medical school, they have a lot of bills they have to pay, they have to go into something that's going to make some money. And it's not, honestly, even if it weren't just that, the idea of making money, it's also about doing something that seems hard and complicated. It's like, I didn't go to 4 years of college and major, you know, do biochemistry and organic chemistry and, you know, have to do all these pre-med stuff and then go to medical school for 4 years and then be a resident for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I could tell someone to eat beans and rice. I did it so I could, you know, so I could do something hard and complicated, even though the beans and rice is better. So sometimes I think there's an analogy between being a fighter pilot and learning how to fly this complicated machine and then being told by your general that, well, and there's a war about to break out down there, but we think we can prevent it by sending you in to negotiate some peace. Yeah. And you're saying, but that's not what I do. I fly fighter planes. I want to bomb something. So it's like, you know, it's kind of, we learn these complicated things. There's a lot around it. It actually, I think as a culture, we need to change. We need to have different expectations from the healthcare establishment. And that's
Yeah.
what's happening. I'm seeing a lot of big changes. And Lisa, you're doing amazing work. Just, you know, you're helping to teach the medical establishment. And
Thank
which is what I've been trying to do for the last 25 or 30 years as well. And I think we're getting there. You know, the whole idea that we're having this meeting right now, and lifestyle medicine, you know, is for people who are interested, check out the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I happen to be on the board of that. It's a wonderful organization. Last year we had 1,200 people show up in Orlando, Florida for the annual meeting, and this year there's 1,500 signed up. It starts next week, actually, all virtual this time. So, okay, that's enough about me grabbing the microphone here. We got to get this back to Lisa. Let's see here. My husband says he would be interested in taking your course if more men were in the class. Have you considered an all-male class?
Yeah, we have. We're really afraid of not being able to fill it up. If your husband has a few friends he can bring with him, like get about 7 people for me and we could do a special class. Absolutely. You know, there is some overhead with the course that we have to cover, but, and you know, it's interesting, the men I've had who've taken the course, it was paid for by their wives or their kids or their daughters, you know, by the Black women in their lives. And so we don't promote it to only women. We are not a platform that says it's like for women or for the empowerment of women. It's for people of color. And yet and still, it's majority women.
Right. I mean, that's kind of been our experience with lifestyle medicine. I mean, it's probably 3 or 4 to 1 in our programs. Someone says, I'd like to hear Dr. Barnett's answer to that question too. Why aren't more docs sharing this with patients? Well, I guess that was my earlier rant, but this is really to hear more from Lisa. So maybe if we have time at the end. Let's see. So this is from a different, this question is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to set up a similar organization as yours for their demographic? And I happen to know the person asking this is from the deaf community.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Well, first, be able to identify the pain points of your community specifically, right? And so understanding what their needs are and not assuming, you're not going out. We did surveys. I did all type of beta testing before we started developing the curriculum and the platform, even, you know, asking how often do you want to receive content? So the frequency and things like that. And so make sure you understand on a very intimate level. It's essentially about co-creating your platform with your community and not assuming that you know what's best and what you think is most valuable. And so that co-creation is going to be really, really important. So make sure you have somebody on the team, even if you are part of that community, if you are part of the deaf community yourself, you know, make sure you garner and latch on to a few other individuals who you believe are going to be your target audience and really have an open conversation and be willing to pivot, be willing to change, and be willing to step aside and recognize that you may not be the expert in this area or this particular space, and get those people on your platform who are. So we interview people of color in certain spaces that I'm not the best voice for, and I think that's important too. So co-creating with the community, understanding their pain points is going to be 2 of the top pieces of advice I can give.
Spoken like somebody with an MBA. You don't have to do any consulting, do you? I'm guessing you do. Actually, you mentioned that you had to pivot it. Can you talk about some of the pivots that you had to make?
Yeah, well, in my first company, man, that's a pivot machine. So in Professionally Fit, you know, it started off as an online personal training company. And so I'm a firm believer in that you don't start a company to work for yourself. You don't start a company to make more money. You don't start a company to be your own boss. You start a company to solve a problem. And so the reason I started Professionally Fit was because I was working as a personal trainer. And the reason I would lose clients is because they would move, relocate. We catered to more of, you know, more higher executive style clients. And so they would be busy with meetings and things like that. And so I said, they need a platform where they don't have to lose the relationship with their coach just because they're out of town. And so I created an online personal training company in 2015. Well, believe it or not, right around the time that Trump was running for office and, you know, positioning to take office, I started seeing a trend in entrepreneurship for people of color. And so I was going to all these networking events, and I was reading articles about these big booming Black businesses. And every founder that I read about, Ted, was overweight. They were, we know obesity is huge. So my company pivoted. I said, we are no longer just targeting C-suite people who want their personal trainer while they're still in Mexico. We are going to target specifically Black founders who are compromising their health for the sustainability and success of their business. And so that's when so our original name was actually Fit Camp 360, and we switched to Professionally Fit. So that's where the name came from. And that was one of the biggest pivots, because I saw a gap. And at that time, Black businesses, Black females were the fastest growing number of entrepreneurs. But we were so unhealthy. And a lot of stats show that many Black businesses only have one employee, which is typically the founder. And so if the founder is unhealthy, then you can imagine what happens to the health of the business. And so mentally and physically, I was like, I'm going to target these Black founders. And that's what we began to do. So we had to pivot there. At the Black Health Academy, we started off as a 3-tier membership platform that we charged for. And again, that became a barrier to individuals getting our content. And so I made the executive decision about a year and a half ago to completely get rid of the pay structure and go to a completely free platform. And we are not a nonprofit, but we earn money again through, some specific courses that we offer. But it kind of operates in a nonprofit in that, we are not looking to money doesn't come before anything. So most of our content is free. And then I have Professionally Fit, my speaking career, other initiatives that I do that generate income very, very well. And so we've had to pivot several times at the Black Health Academy just to make sure this content was accessible and available to the people we wanted to serve.
It looks like we can actually show your videos. Our engineer has at your website.
Great.
So Bob, you want to start sharing, and maybe Lisa, you can guide us to which video you'd like to see.
Yeah, is he doing the Black Health Academy first or the Farm to Table course?
Let's go to the farm. Let's do the Farm to Table. I love that video of you.
Okay. Oh, it looks like he has the Black Health Academy video.
Oh, okay, whichever. Yeah.
I founded the Black Health Academy in October of 2017 to combat the vast health disparities in Western medicine. Our mission is to eradicate the most common chronic diseases we see in our community. There are so many discrepancies and disparities in health for Black people that it's almost safe to say that Western medicine does more harm than good. And so the Black Health Academy is a platform which marries community with e-learning to help individuals understand the power that they have within themselves, to educate themselves on medicine, medications, prevention, chronic disease, and understand that it is within their right to live a life that is full, whole, and free of disease and discomfort. Get Planet, an introduction to a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, is our monthly first Saturday nutrition class we hold in downtown Detroit. During this class, we lay the foundation of the importance of the Black Health Academy by educating the audience on Black health history. And then we move into the foundation of a whole foods plant-based lifestyle and essentially overall nutrition. We teach how you are able to take back your power and your health via your plate. It is important to understand that our food holds a lot of power, and we can reverse and or prevent many of the common chronic diseases we deal with just by changing the way we eat. So help us help you. Please join the Black Health Academy at www.theblackhealthacademy.com.
Wow, Lisa, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep. Actually, how did we get to the other video, the Farm to Table?
Yeah, I sent him the website. He has it right here.
Oh, is it? Okay, perfect.
Yep, there it is.
Great. Okay.
So thinking back on the first 3 weeks, you should be very well versed now in what you need to focus on to be successful for the next 3 weeks. You should have done enough so far to identify, okay, sugar is my thing, or water is my thing. Oh, I ate more dairy than I thought, or I'm still intimidated by a lot of foods. What do we need to work on, okay? Nailed it, pop quiz. We don't care. We are not calorie counters. This is not Weight Watcher. We don't do math to eat, right? We just want to enjoy our food. You listen to your body before you listen to an app or metric, a general metric that's supposed to apply to the whole world. It doesn't make sense, right? If you have an appetite, you eat. If you don't, you don't. The reason most people obsess over things like calories and counting and macronutrients and how many carbs and how much protein and all that is because they're not eating what they're supposed to eat, so they're overly worried about getting everything they need to thrive.
But when I get up, I'm rested. I'm not tired. And the best thing is I'm not searching for no sugar.
That's it.
I will drink water every morning.
Got it.
I will read and research every single label on everything I put in and over my body.
Yes.
I would never eat McDonald's drink soda again.
Yes.
I will eat plants every day.
Plants every day.
I will move.
Yes.
Eating exercise.
Man, and how much weight have you lost since you've been plant-based? 40 pounds. 40 pounds.
I usually have really bad cramps, but I don't take anything. This month, no cramps.
I was in her class this summer. I come to the class, my life has been changed.
No one urges us on TV, not even really in our life, to say, take the reins of your health.
Think about how much you say you love yourself. Well, invest in yourself.
Life expectancy is not about what the world expects from you, but rather what you expect from it. They expect you to show up in a small way. They expect you to be quiet and unintrusive. They expect you to eat meat and dairy. They expect you to hate your job, dread Mondays, think everything costs too much, and be broke. They expect you to be overweight and to have at least one chronic disease and be on at least one prescription drug. That's what they expect of us as Black women. Okay? They expect you to have hypertension, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, at least something that's diagnosable. But is that what you expect out of life? Okay? Start demanding what you want from the world. You deserve it, and they deserve to be starved.
I love that video, Lisa. It's really wonderful. I can just imagine your course and being there. Yeah.
We have a lot of fun.
You should be really proud of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Wow.
So I saw the comment about could we share the registration link to next Saturday's event? So I've done that in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I've shared the Zoom registration link, guys, for our first Saturday class coming up.
That's great. Great. Well, let's see how much time we have left here. Does anybody, in the last few minutes, does anybody have some final questions before we kind of sum it up here? Lisa, I think it's time for you to give some closing messages here.
Okay.
Yeah. What would you? What should be our next steps as a community locally, and our next steps, as a nation?
Yeah, so similar to what I told, the individual who asked about, I want to create a similar platform for a different demographic. So whether you're a physician, a community activist, or just a layperson trying to learn more, do more, and make the world a better place, make sure you are collaborating with individuals as opposed to making assumptions about what the needs are, and making sure that the individuals that you want to work with or that you want to advocate for have a voice on your platform, whatever that platform may be, right? So that's going to be really important. Also, understand that, many of us adopt this diet for health. Many of us adopt this diet for compassion, and part of that compassion piece is compassion for our fellow men, regardless of what they look like. We're not all that different, honestly, and so each one of us has a talent and something to offer the world, but all of us need access to the resources necessary to do that. So understand that the absence of disease is not the presence of health. So just as much energy that we put into sustaining life and reaching a level of quality and optimal health for ourselves is as much energy we need to put into social justice and making sure that everyone has proper representation. So whatever privilege you hold, use it for the advantage of many.
And that is a wonderful message.
Thank you.
And on that note, I think I'd like to thank Lisa Smith for your time and expertise. And we hope to hear more from you in the future.
Thank you so much, Ted.
Sure,
Thank you,
sure.
Rock Light, for having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Take care now. Thanks a lot, everybody. And with this recording will go live in a few days and you'll receive a link. So, okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.